If I were to ask you right now, how often do you feel completely genuinely energized?
And not just, caffeinated.
Right, exactly. But truly vibrant. I think most of us would pause. The truth is, we sort of accept this constant low-grade energetic drain as normal.
As the default human operating state, we think that feeling depleted or, getting emotionally hurt by things happening around us, that's just life.
And that feeling, that constant loss of vitality, maybe you experience it as burnout or just this low-level anxiety, that is exactly what our source material is challenging today.
It is. It argues that this low energy state is not natural at all. In fact, it says it's a harmful deviation from our optimal energetic blueprint.
So our mission today is to figure out the specific mechanism behind that deviation. We're doing a deep dive into a text called The Psychoenergetics of Mamattva. We want to really dissect human attachment through this lens of spiritual psychology and understand precisely how our internal resource, what the paper calls the Bhakti Sadhana force.
Your core spiritual vitality?
Exactly. How that vitality is systematically compromised.
And to really get into this, we need two opposing concepts as anchors. First, we have Nisworth Prem.
Which is defined as a purely selfless, non-egoic love.
Right. And then opposing it, we have Mamattva.
That's the one from the title of the paper.
It is. Mamattva is, it's often translated as mindness or possessiveness. It's that ego claim that says, this person, this thing, this idea is mine.
So the argument is that it's this mamattva, this mindness, that fuels our entangled attachments. And those are what generate emotional pain and just drain us. It's like a diagnosis of suffering.
It really is a diagnosis for why, even when the underlying impulse is love, the dynamic so often leads to exhaustion and anxiety.
Let's start at the very beginning then. The genesis of attachment. The paper uses a classic example. The parent-child bond.
Right, to illustrate what it calls the natural state, or prakriti.
Why that bond specifically?
Because it shows that this neurochemical bonding is inevitable for survival. An infant relies completely on the mother. That dependence creates an instant, profound biological connection. It has to.
And what's fascinating here is the distinction the sources make about that initial connection. They say that at the moment of birth, that first rush of protective love is pure Nisworth Prem.
Completely devoid of ego.
Yes. The mother's manavruti, her mental focus is fixed on the child just for protection. Only selfless love.
And that pure selfless drive is the energetic starting point. But, and this is the crucial part, there's a shift. As consciousness develops, two psychological constructs emerge.
Taham and Mamattva.
Correct. Aham is the fundamental sense of I am, my individual self, and right behind it comes Mamattva, the feeling that this is mine.
Now, you said earlier these aren't inherently bad. So where does the functional line get crossed? I mean, we all need the sense of self and Ham, and we need to functionally own things to live in the world. So where's the line between that and pathology?
That is the essential question. And the paper says Aham and Mamattva are perfectly functional within nature, prakriti. The pathology starts when the individual ego grabs that natural, selfless love.
At Nisworth Prem.
Yes, and it claims it as possessiveness.
So the ego performs a kind of hijacking operation.
Exactly. It fools the person into believing that this possessiveness, this intense, anxious gripping, is love. But the source is clear. Possessiveness is actually a distortion, a corruption of pure love.
It's a disturbance of love, not love itself.
Yes. It takes the pure energy of Nisworth Prem and funnels it through the anxiety of Mamattva.
That distinction is absolutely critical. It immediately explains why a really intense love can feel so incredibly painful and draining. And it brings us right to the core thesis of the paper, the locus of identity.
The locus of identity. You can think of it as your soul's central processing unit. And the entanglement mechanism it describes is stunningly simple, almost devastatingly so.
So walk us through it. How does that entanglement happen on an energetic level?
It happens when an individual takes the existence, the thoughts, the feelings, the entire reality of an external being.
Or an object, right? It could be a bank account or a sports team.
Sure. And brings them into their own locus of identity. So that external thing is no longer just external.
Meaning, I might know intellectually that my partner is a separate person, but energetically, I've internalized their reality as part of my own. I'm processing their problems as if they are literally happening to me.
Precisely. That internalization is the mechanism of Mamattva, and the consequences are, well, they're mathematically certain. The external being's happiness becomes your happiness.
And their distress becomes your distress.
Inevitably, this linkage creates what the sources call a bandhan, a binding, a knot.
And if the locus of identity is the CPU, this span-in is like a permanent leaky connection to an external server. And since that external world is always unstable, that link guarantees pain. Dukkam. It's a self-imposed vulnerability.
The self-imposed energetic shackle. And it gets worse. This creates a continuous drain. The attached person, the paper says, never loses their vritti, their mental focus on that object of attachment.
That's such a key detail. It's not just the attachment, it's the persistence of the focus.
Yeah.
Even when the person isn't there, that mental program is running in the background.
It never shuts down. You could be working, doing something totally unrelated, but a part of your consciousness is still running a background sync on that person or that event you've internalized.
You see this in how internalized impressions remain, right? They surface in dreams or memories.
Exactly, because you miss the sukh, the pleasure, or the comfort that you got from processing them as part of your identity. You're not just missing the external person. You're missing the internal feeling you got from them.
And that constant missing, that search for the pleasure, creates a persistent, low-grade, energetic drag. It's just exhausting.
It is. Which brings us to this idea of an energy economy.
Where the state of your attachments basically dictates your bioenergetic vitality. The contrast is really sharp.
It is. When energy circulates freely, that's the state of non-attachment, you have low friction, high vitality. Your CPU isn't overloaded.
But when attachment leads to that external gripping, that holding pattern of mamatva, energy collapses. It's like running your own operating system with 1,000 background apps all syncing constantly. It just eats up your battery.
It creates a state of perpetual energetic debt. And the paper gives us this powerful specific example, the case study of the grandfather.
The grandfather whose grandson breaks an engagement. This part is so important for showing the real physical cost.
It is. So the situation wasn't even about the grandfather's own marriage, it was his grandson's. But the grandfather had internalized the idea of that marriage into his own identity.
So he'd linked it to his status, maybe his happiness, his vision for the family's future.
All of it. So on an energetic level, he saw that wedding as his achievement, his future peace. So the moment that external event was disrupted, the engagement ended, it shattered that internalized part of his identity.
And the source says this disruption caused the sickness of binding.
Yes. His physical response was immediate. It was profound. He lost his appetite for a week.
And that loss of appetite, it wasn't just random grief. It was the physical proof of an energetic collapse. It was caused by an internalized external stress.
It shows that the pain, the dukkam we feel from external events isn't just a metaphor. It translates directly into biological friction, real measurable symptoms. And this leads the source to a rather dark conclusion about the jivatma.
The embodied soul.
Right. It basically says the jivatma holds a doctoral degree in generating self-pain.
We are experts at manufacturing our own suffering through these identity mechanisms.
We're so skilled at it, we extend our identity. I am a person whose grandson is happily married, that we guarantee suffering when reality, inevitably does its own thing.
Okay, so the diagnosis is clear. Internalization leads to binding, which leads to pain and energy collapse. So let's talk about the solution, what the text calls Jivan Mukti, or living liberation.
And this is where people often get stuck.
Because they think the solution is detachment, right? In an emotional, cold sense.
Exactly. And this is the crucial nuance the paper provides. The solution is not the cessation of relationships. You don't have to abandon your family, your booties. That's not the point. Affection, duty, relationships, they must exist.
So the suffering comes solely from the internalization of the external into the locus of identity, not from the relationship itself. So how do we keep the relationship without absorbing the other person's reality?
Jivan Mukti is defined simply as the state where no external being is internalized into your personal identity. It's an internal boundary, so effective that your inner peace becomes independent of external circumstances.
But what does that look like day to day? If I stop internalizing my partner's worries, does that mean I stop caring or helping?
Not at all. In this state, interactions remain. Well, interactional, they're transactional, they're functional, you still show affection, you still help, you still do your duties, all the memories and experiences are still there.
So the key is what's missing from the interaction.
What's missing is the binding. The interactions continue, but without the distortion of 4 specific things. Rag, which is that intense attachment. Vesh, intense aversion. Aham, the inflated ego. And mamatva, that mindness.
So you can still love your child fiercely, but that love is pure Nisworth Prem, because it shows up without the ego's possessive needs, without the anxiety that comes from internalizing their future as your own measure of success.
It becomes love that serves rather than love that requires. You act out of functional duty and selfless affection, not out of a desperate need to secure your own internal peace through their external success.
So the paper ends this section with a prescription. If we're supposed to stop internalizing external beings, what should occupy that sacred space, that locus of identity?
The source is very clear. The only entity that should be internalized into the identity is Narayana, which represents the divine, Paramatma.
The soul internalization. And that shift from the external to the divine is what allows you to escape the painful dualities of pleasure and pain.
And instead, access Ananda, bliss. It shifts your entire center of gravity from the transient and the chaotic to the infinite and the immutable. It's the definitive energetic correction.
Let's bring this all back to someone listening who might be struggling with this right now. The core takeaway feels like spiritual freedom and really energetic health requires a conscious, active shift in where you anchor your identity.
Absolutely. We live in a society that constantly confuses worry and anxiety with love. We say, if I don't worry about you, I wouldn't be a good parent or a good partner. But these sources argue that true prem is defined precisely by its freedom from that egoic internalization.
So the real work is to see that the Jivatma, the embodied self, is just. It's prone to hijacking love through the ego. We default to making things ours.
So the conscious work is to keep those external interactions functional, full of duty and affection, but to reserve that innermost identity exclusively for the divine.
And this is how you finally get to that state the sources describe as high vitality and low friction. It's an energy optimization strategy that's available to everyone.
It is.
So for a final provocative thought, let's focus just on the immediate application of this energy economy model. I want you to consider the specific forms of pain, the dukkam that you're carrying right now, that are not biologically yours. If you consciously decided right now to stop internalizing external stress, a colleague's bad mood, a relative's financial worry, a friend's disappointment, what specific forms of that pain would just immediately lift?
That decision to move from possessiveness to pure functionality, it changes your energetic trajectory instantly.
Right.
You move from constantly surviving the fallout of external events to genuinely circulating energy freely, protecting that core vitality.
Something to really reflect on as you go about your week. Thank you for guiding us through this. It's challenging, but ultimately a very freeing landscape.
It was my pleasure.